Hello everybody, thank you very much for joining me today. I'm a professional photographer based near Northwich in Cheshire, and I specialise in lifestyle food photography, product photography, but I also spend a lot of my time teaching now. I'm very keen on teaching and sharing the knowledge that I've got in photography. So some of the workshops that I run, there's a wide variety for beginners, people who've got posh cameras and just want to get off auto. Then more professional courses like food photography, and then how to photograph your kids, a really wide range. So I'm just going to share my screen briefly to show you my website so that you can see when you try and look up afterwards, if you want to, you'll know that you're in the right place. So my website is called Love Your Lens. It's loveyourlens.co.uk, and I've got a really wide variety of workshops. I'll just click on that there so you can see the drop down. Some of the workshops that I offer, including photography weekends as well, which are really good fun. Bit of Pilates and yoga on those as well. So that's a really nice getaway. Obviously at the moment the COVID situation has meant that all of my face-to-face workshops have stopped, and I'm moving a lot of stuff online where I can. So I have now got, we've got an online section there. I've got some free resources that you might like to look at, like podcasts and videos and PDFs and things like that. But I've also got now an online phone photography course that went live about 6 weeks ago. So you can also, I'll just click on that and you can have a look at that as well. So it's just under £40, and you'll learn lots of stuff. It's in modules. You can do bits of it as you want, dip in and out. Do it in your own time, and you've got, you know, lifetime access to it basically. Lots of videos, lots of examples of how to do stuff. We're gonna dip into some of it today. I'm going to show you some tips and tricks today, but obviously that's the full course there. So I'll just stop that share now. Oops, I nearly pressed leave then. You don't want me to leave, do you? I'm back now, aren't I? Back in the room? Is that right? That's everybody's, all your videos are off, so I can't actually see everybody. Okay, so what I'm here today is to show you how to take better photographs with your phone. But what I'd like to start off with is kind of managing your expectations in a way of what you can and can't do with a phone. So phones are amazing nowadays. I mean, so much better than they were a few years back. I mean, I use mine so much more than I used to, but there are some things that they cannot achieve the same as a camera and a good lens can do. And again, I'm going to share my screen now to show you some shots that have been taken with a camera and a good lens. And this is, hello?
But, you know, we do already have a question. Somebody was just wondering, do you do anything with videos and editing?
I don't, unfortunately. I do play around for my own business, but I'm in no way an expert on that. I'm afraid that's not one of the things I do. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, so these pictures that hopefully you can see here are all for one of the businesses within the business growth program, actually, called Dipple Tipple. And these were taken during lockdown, and I'll just pick one particular one to go a bit larger with it. This kind of quality of picture you're not going to achieve with a phone. So this kind of soft focus background, which is what we all really want in some of our pictures, you can try to achieve that with a phone, and to some extent it will do it, and I'll show you. But you've got to bear in mind that it's very much software done in a phone. It's not the lens. It's kind of clever software technology trying to mimic a soft focus background, and it doesn't always do it very accurately, doesn't do it how you'd want it to. It might make some things at the front of the picture go a bit funny as well, and it really depends on what you're doing as to how well it will do it. So that really is about sort of being realistic about what you can achieve with a phone. So what a phone can do is some great simple clean shots, especially for overhead shots when you shoot things from above. They're known as flat lays and they're very popular on Instagram. A phone will do a fantastic job of shooting things like that. So it's great for flattish products and sort of flattish food like pastas, salads, soups, that's pies and things like that. It'll work really really well. So again, I'm just going to share my screen very briefly with you. Go back to the same place and just go back. And another customer of, so someone else who's a member of the Business Growth Programme as well, Perfect Samosa. These are some pictures that I did for her with a phone because we were working to a budget and she wanted them done quickly. So these are all photographs that I styled for her with and took with a phone. Okay, so this is the kind of quality that you can get with a phone, and most people wouldn't know they've been taken with a phone, not a camera. Okay, so you can see there's an incredible amount of detail, and there, she can be using those on her website and her social media. And I hope she doesn't mind me sharing them with you today. Okay, so I'll stop that share again now. Okay, so one of the things that you really can't do with a phone is those shots with a clean white background. Okay, those product shots that you might want for your website where the product is on an absolute pure white background. This is really difficult to achieve even with a camera outside of a proper photographic studio. And the reason for that is you need to get the light exactly right and pure to create that kind of shot. So even at home here with the kit that I've got, I find it really difficult to achieve because I've always got daylight of some form coming into my studio. And however much I use studio lights to try and counteract that daylight, I've got constant change in daylight throughout the day. And what happens is your background ends up looking grey and different in every single shot. So you imagine how much more difficult that's going to be for you at home with a phone as well. So
Jane?
Yes.
I've had a few questions actually. What phone is it that you use?
Right, okay, I've got a Huawei P20 Pro. It's about 18 months old now. Very, very good. That's what I shot those food shots with. And I'm going to be using an iPhone 11 today as well, which is my husband's phone. And if I was to choose between the two, I would go back to my Huawei each time to take the photographs because I believe the colour is more accurate. It always seems to focus so well as well. I think iPhones are very good, but because I've got the two side by side, I've definitely got preference.
Yeah, we did have a question about iPhones actually. Somebody was just asking what you thought about the new iPhone Pro, considering that it has a super fancy camera. But you've sort of answered that. Is the iPhone Pro any better?
Well, it's the the iPhone 11 that I've got isn't the Pro, I don't think. It sounds a bit daft, but it's my husband's. I don't think he's told me the exact model. But one of the things it does do quite well is blur the background. But again, there are some problems with it. No, I wouldn't say I would choose that over the Huawei.
Great, thanks, Jane.
Okay. So back to those pictures where you want that pure white background. If you've got a very simple product, so like a box or something like this, this jug here, okay, if it's got very clean lines and it's solid and it's got good solid edges, what you could do is take a picture of that with your phone, make sure that it all looks very solid and in focus. And by that I mean don't use the soft focus feature, just take a good straightforward shot of that, and we'll talk about how you'll do that in a bit. And then what you could do is cut out that product out and put it on a clean white background. So that's one of the ways that you can do a product shot on a white background. That requires you knowing how to use Photoshop Elements, Photoshop, or Photoshop Elements, to be honest as well. It's a slightly easier version of Photoshop. Or using one of the apps around. I don't know the names of any of them at the moment, but you can use apps to cut products out. They're as good as the app. Sometimes they work really well and sometimes they don't. If you've got a clear object, you're going to find that really hard to do, to get a clean line to cut on a clear object. And if you've got, I've just got random objects on my desk, by the way. If you've got this sort of thing, this is a little mouse, it's got whiskers, you're going to find those whiskers really, really hard to do. And even sometimes this sort of texture around the mouse and the string. So I think you're starting to see it's not quite as easy as people kind of imagine it is from the outside. Something else that you could do is take the image and then you send it off, and it may be somebody in China or the US or wherever that actually cuts it out for you for a small charge. So you find the people that would do cutouts for you, and they perhaps charge $3 or $5 to get that done. Okay. What I would highly recommend for your key product shots that you need on a white background, don't mess about trying to do this, get them done in a studio. Send them off to a studio, they will deal with all the reflections and things. You know, you've got a shiny object here. If you don't want reflections of trees and windows and things like that from home, it's very, very difficult to get rid of that in a home setting. Where you've got daylight coming in. A studio will do those shots for you. If you send them off in bulk, it's their bread and butter and it's a lot cheaper than you'd imagine. So I would say leave that sort of tricky shot to the professionals and be realistic about what your phone can do. Okay, you got any more questions, Emily?
Yes, somebody's just asked, where do you find a soft focus on the camera? Is that something that you'll be covering when you're showing
it? It is, yes. Yeah, I'm going to come on to that. Okay. Thanks. All right. So what you can learn to do yourself very well with your phone are those sort of shots for your social media, all the lifestyle shots. If you would prefer to have lifestyle product shots, so like the food I did for Perfect Smo, so that's what I mean by lifestyle. If you go for that sort of product shot for your website rather than a clean white background, then yes, you can achieve a certain amount with your phone. And you can also do really good kind of the behind the scenes sorts of shots that people really like, because it makes your business kind of more familiar to them. It's that personal touch. So I'll just quickly share again a quick example of the sort of thing that you can do with a phone. So just let me just locate that for you. Okay, all of these were taken with a phone at a business called Food Sorcery in Didsbury, where they run cookery schools. So, you know, you've got that sort of thing. I mean, that's a great portrait of the chef. It really captures his personality. He's quite zany. I don't know if anyone knows him, but, and look how much the background's blurred on that. Okay, that's with my Huawei P20. He's clear, he's beautifully lit. The colour's great. I've edited this afterwards, but I'm going to share with you how, you know, what you can use to do that. Lovely shot from above. Another kind of action shot with lovely blurring in the background. And another sort of shot, nice and fresh and clean. And this lady, lovely blurring in the background, the spice yard she's from. And then another shot. So all of this sort of stuff you can do really well with your phone. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is move on to how to best use your phone. And I've got my iPhone linked up and I'm going to share the screen with you. I can't share my Huawei with my Mac, it just won't work. So I'm using an iPhone here, but I suspect a lot of people have got the iPhone anyway. So just bear with me while I make all that work.
Jane, just while you're setting that up, for anybody out there who wants to move away from using phones, is there a good basic starter camera that you'd recommend for a complete beginner?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, there's the thing is, there's so much choice now, and it depends on budget. It depends on whether you want to go for a smaller, lighter camera, because the market's changed a lot recently. You don't have to have a big, heavy DSLR. You can have what's called a mirrorless camera, which does the same as a DSLR, exactly the same, has all the lenses, but it's much smaller and lighter. But I would look at a Nikon, something like a D3 400, or a Canon. Really hard to keep up with all the latest launches in Canon. I think it might be something like a Canon 1000D. But if you look up beginners SLR cameras, then you'll find some good recommendations. And the market price for those is probably about £400 with a lens. And you could also look at a mirrorless camera, which would be something like the Sony a6000 is a good starter as well. But if anybody wants to message me and ask me any questions, then they can do, that's fine.
Thanks.
Okay, so you should be seeing my iPhone there. Just got to log in again there. Okay, and I'm going to go off to the camera now. Okay, so, oh, you can see all my notes there. So this is what I'm going to be saying to you. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is show you how to focus accurately with your phone. And this is similar across any camera make, so don't worry if you've not got an iPhone. You should find that you can do very similar things. So if I want to focus with this phone, I'm just in the normal photo mode, and to focus, don't just press the white shutter button at the bottom, okay? If you want to focus accurately, you need to click on the main part of your subject. So if I want to photograph this glass, I need to touch on the glass there, okay? And that will make it focus on the right part of the picture. So focus on that and then take your shot. If I wanted to focus on the pen pot behind, I would focus on that and then take the shot. And what you'll find is the glass will look slightly soft. It's not quite as in focus as the pen pot behind. So as these phone cameras get more and more sophisticated, you do have to be more careful at how you're focusing, because they are trying to blur the background a bit for you on close-up shots. So you need to be careful where you're focusing, okay? If you take a picture and you feel like the brightness isn't right, because the phone doesn't always get that right, then you can adjust that as you take the picture. Okay, so if I click on this jar here, the vase, it's all gone a little bit bright, and the reason why it's done that is because the vase is dark and the camera thinks it needs to lighten the picture. So if I click on that there, and you see this sunshine symbol that comes up, if I scroll my finger up the screen or down the screen, any time that sunshine symbol is there, I can darken and brighten the picture. So I can change the exposure, and that is probably what I would go with on that one, okay, rather than the very bright picture that we would have had if I hadn't have done that. Okay, so that's a little trick that people don't always know about. My dogs are going balmy in the background because I think someone must be at the door, so you'll have to ignore that if you can hear them. Okay, now something else that you'll see on your phone is something called HDR. There's a button at the top called HDR there. Mine's it was off, now it's on. That's off and on. Now, if you can't see it on your screen, what you probably, if with an iPhone, quite often what you've got to do is go out of your camera and go to your main settings, okay, and then scroll down until you see camera. Okay, there's camera. Go into camera and have a look down to the bottom there. It says Smart HDR. I'm going to tell you what HDR is in a minute. But if this is switched on here on an iPhone, it won't give you the option to turn it off and on. Let me go back to the camera to show you. You see how I've not now got HDR at the top? The phone is going to do it whether or not I want it or not, okay? So I would prefer to have that switched off in my settings, and I say when I want to use it or not. Okay, and once you know what it is, you might understand why I'm saying that. Okay. At the top of that list, can you see it says grid and it's switched on? Okay. You need to have that grid switched on. If you've not got an iPhone, you may have to find this setting when you're actually in the camera itself. You might have an option to look at some different settings when you're in the camera itself. But that grid is there now. Can you see it where it looks like the noughts and crosses grid? Okay, that grid's important for composition, and I'll come back to it in a little while. Do we have any questions, Emily, at the moment?
Yes, we've just had one come in. Are there any paid for ISO camera apps with better functionality or performance than the standard iPhone app?
Yeah, there is an app called Camera Plus that you could use, and it works well on iPhones. I generally think it depends what level of photographer you are. If you're quite experienced with a camera, then you will find that you can start to control things like the shutter speed, the aperture, which is the one that blurs the background, and something called ISO and other things. It will make the phone camera work more like a camera. So you could have a look at that one, okay? I mean, at the end of the day, it's all down to the quality of the lens on this camera and the way that it processes and uses software to try and enhance the picture. Okay, so HDR, what is it? We've got, signal the messages coming in at the top there. HDR, it's very typical. I don't know how to stop those messages, I'll flick it away. It's a very typical day-to-day, actually, when you might want to use HDR. We've got very, very bright sunny weather, haven't we? And on bright sunny days like this, you get very bright areas when you're looking at a scene, and you get very dark shadows. Now, our brain is very good at looking at a scene like that, and we can still see details in those bright areas, and we can still see details in those shadows. And that range between very dark shadows and very bright areas, and all the lights in between, all the kind of tones of light in between, that's called high dynamic range. And our brains have got a really high, we can cope with a high dynamic range of light, and that's what HDR stands for. But the camera isn't as good as our brains and our eyes. It can't see the same range of light, so it struggles with the very bright areas, and we'll show them as washed out and white, and it struggles with the very dark areas, and we'll show them as solid black sometimes. Okay, so if you switch HDR on your camera, it will try to bring back the detail in those dark areas and in those bright areas. So I'm going to try and do an example now. I'm going to switch HDR off, and I'm going to show you a glimpse of the world outside, where it's very, very bright, isn't it? So, and if I try and bring outside to a better kind of light for you, I mean, the camera's trying to pick up everything else as well. I'll just go a bit closer. Okay, so what the camera's done there is it's got the exposure better for outside, but can you see how dark inside went? Like the curtains and things have gone very dark. Okay, so the camera was trying to just do the bright areas and couldn't do anything about the darker areas. But if I switch HDR off, and this is where a live demo probably just won't work, and I click on those clouds again, I'm hoping that it'll do a slightly better job with the curtains. I'm not sure it has done, to be honest. This is typical of when you're trying to do an example. I'll tell you what it has done. If you look at the difference between the two pictures, it has made outside much better, hasn't it? Much better exposed outside, and inside is still a bit dark. So it wasn't the greatest example, but what it's trying to do is get the light right in both areas. Okay, have a play with that. I'm trying to photograph things that are very bright, where you've got a very sunny day like today. Switch HDR on and take a picture of a scene, switch it off and take a picture of a scene, and see if you can see the difference, would be my advice on that. The obvious question then as well is, when would you not use HDR? And when you wouldn't use it is if you're trying to purposely have silhouettes. So, or you're trying to photograph shadows and you want that really stark contrast between bright and dark. So don't use it for things like that, where it will try to brighten the shadows and darken the brighter areas for you and ruin the look of the picture that you're trying to do. Okay. How to turn on the grid lines, we've done that. Right, portrait mode. So let's just have a look. I've probably just got to log in again a second. Okay, so portrait mode, if you've got it on your phone, my Huawei has something called soft focus background, in sort of, you have to go onto a screen with more options, and then you've got the soft focus mode. But on an iPhone, along the bottom there where you've got photo, some iPhones have this portrait mode. Okay, so if I look, I'm still in photo though, if I look at that scene in front of me now, if I click on this jug, the background is slightly soft focus, even without being in photo mode, isn't it? Can you see that? If I focus on that, things at the back, the printer and things are very slightly soft focus. But if we go into portrait mode, and can you see how it's instantly applied a softening there? That is mainly software doing that. Okay, and it isn't always as accurate as it should be. So I can kind of, I'll still click on that and still darken the exposure, and like I showed you before, and it's telling me to move slightly further away. That's it, it's achieved it better now. I've moved slightly further away. I'll just take that shot. But if I have a look at that, it's not been very accurate around, well, it's not bad. Okay. So it's quite good. I mean, I've had some really good results. What it's done oddly there is the computer. Computer looks a bit odd, the edge of it. But at first glance, that looks okay, doesn't it? But it is mainly computer generated. It's not the camera doing that work. Okay, it's software. So that's the main features of your phone. Obviously today, I mean, we're already at 1 o'clock and I've not done half the stuff I'm going to do yet. So I'll speed up a little bit, but that's the main features of your phone. So I'm going to stop the share now and just pause to see if there's been any more questions.
No, currently no more questions, Jane.
Great, okay, brilliant. All right, so what I'm going to talk about now is light. So having sort of learned how to deal with the light a little bit with your phone by brightening or darkening the picture or using HDR, you can also help improve the light that you're working in. So if you're working indoors, always turn off any electric lights, particularly those sort of the bulbs that we use in our general everyday lives, and the spots in the ceiling and all that sort of stuff. Even if you think then that it makes it look a little bit, you know, rubbish light inside, your phone will cope with that very well, and it's far better than having that yellowy kind of horrible look that we get when we use artificial light. The easiest light to work with is shade. Natural daylight in the shade. So a cloudy day, absolutely perfect for photography. If it's really sunny like it is now, the last thing I would do is photograph people or products in bright sunlight, because you're going to get those harsh areas of light and those deep dark shadows ruining the shot. So get in the shade. If you're photographing something outside, even if it's just a flower, find a flower that's in the shade. Or the other exception to that would be in golden hour. So the food shots that I showed you for, the gin shots that I showed you for Dipple Tipple, I purposely waited for golden hour to shoot those shots. So I did one each day for about a week using the golden hour, because the light is warm and soft. Golden hour is approximately an hour before sunset and an hour after sunrise. I don't do sunrise, I'm not a morning person, so mine is in the evening, and at the moment it's quite late. It will be something like 8:30 till 9:45. It's longer than an hour. Beautiful time to do portraits and even some product shots outside. Okay, if you're photographing people, try to get in the habit of just looking quickly at their faces. Are their faces lit evenly? So my face now, I've got quite a strong light one side and a slightly less strong light another side. So looking down my face, quite bright, I can't get this right, the other side, quite bright that side, and a little bit darker this side. So this is where the weaker lamp is, over to that side. Okay, so if I wanted a more evenly lit picture, I could turn that way and I've got the full bright light on me. Okay, I often don't use those lights, but because of the way I've got my desk configured at the moment, it's a little bit dark in here. But if I face the window, I've got lovely light falling on me. If I've got my back to the window, my face is in deep shade. Okay, so you need to face your subject towards the light. If you can, obviously, if it's a candid shot, sorry, not a candid shot, it's a pose shot, face them towards the light. Get into the habit of just quickly looking at people's faces and going, oh, yeah, actually, they're in shadow. Could you just turn that way for me? So just slow down a little bit and think about what you're doing. If you're doing a if you can't move people out of the sun or facing the lights, that's the one time that you would use the flash on your camera to fill in the shadow and light their faces. Okay, flash on phones is still notoriously bad. I'm sure it's an area that they must be working on to try and improve, and I probably never use the flash on my phone because it's so awful. Okay. So what I'm going to do now quickly is show you how I would set up a shoot at home for a product or some food. So I'm just going to angle my computer over that way, okay, and I'll talk you through. Yeah.
Just while you're about to do that, we've had a question about food photography. Are there good sites to get photography boards for food photography?
Yeah, I'm going to come on to that, absolutely. I can recommend some. And when I do some notes later as well, I will add the links to the sites that I use. Okay, so what I've got set up over here is a simple background on there. Can you see that? Just tilt that way. A simple backdrop as a ground, if you like, and a simple backdrop on a wall. And just to show you one of those, it's like that, okay? Now this is a paper one. These are about the cheapest that you can get. I think this is about probably less than £12 for this. You can get much bigger ones. You can get them to going up to A0. And I would say be very careful about the size. You always need slightly bigger than you think. And I only use these little ones for very small setups like I've got on here. Okay, but I can give you the names of lots of people like these. I love these textures. I mean, this is like a sort of distressed metal, and textured backgrounds are much easier to work with than plain black or plain white backgrounds. So have some texture rather than plain. It will make it much easier to work with. So the way that I've set this up here, my window is that side, so the light is falling sideways onto this setup here. And I do that on purpose because side light is really nice. It creates light this side of my shot and it creates some gentle shadow this side. If you eliminate all shadow, if you don't have shadow, it looks false and flat. It doesn't look real. We're used to seeing shadow. So shadow looks kind of more real, if you like. Okay. If you don't want the shadow, you can simply use a board, bit of old white foam board this is, and I've creased it so it'll stand up on its own. If I just put that there, obviously I know you can't see this, but the light from the window is reflected off that board and onto the product, and it gets rid of the shadows here. Okay, but I like the shadows, so I'm going to take that away. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to just do with my iPhone, I'm going to do a quick shot of this setup that I can share with you in a moment. Okay, I'm going to do a flat lay of this one, an overhead shot, And those grid lines are going to be really important for me in making sure that my phone is exactly level. And I'm going to focus on the name of the product to make sure that's nice and clear. Adjust the exposure a tiny bit and take the shot. And I'll share that with you in a moment to show you how that looks. All right, so that looks great as a flat lay, and what it actually is some cheap old tea from Aldi. You must make sure your product looks absolutely fantastic, your best pack, packaged beautifully. I mean, this is like one tea bag left in here, so obviously I wouldn't normally use this. And then I've got a simple cloth. That's to add texture and interest. If you have a very plain setup, it looks wrong. It just looks like your product is just sat there in the middle, sort of doing nothing. Whereas I've got a simple little story going on here. Somebody's taking a bit of time out to have a nice little drink of green tea. I've got some lime in there, and I've got a bit of lime cut here. Okay, I've also split open one of the tea bags and sprinkled some of the tea around on the shot to add a bit of interest and texture to the shot as well. Now, obviously, I can't do a full-on styled food shot for you today. I've just kept it as simple as possible. But what I'm going to do now is then show you the difference when you try and do a shot that's not a flat lay. So I'm going to shoot this from the side now. And I'm going to line my camera up nice and straight and take that shot. Okay, so I've focused on the tea again, and I'm taking that shot. Now, I'm not happy with that now. I would restyle this quite a bit. You can't just go from a flat lay to a different type of shot and hope that it's going to work out. So I'm just going to try that again. Okay. I'm going to just try some different angles just to show you what happens with different angles on this as well. Now, I have to say, if I was doing this for real, I would have completely started that whole setup again, okay, and styled it very differently to the flat lay. But obviously, with time constraints that we're working on, I can't really do that. Okay. So, I'm going to share my phone with you again. Have we got any questions again, Emily?
Sorry, yeah, just a general one. Are they called backgrounds or boards? What do you call them when you search?
Photo boards, photo backdrops, and if people want to know some names, look up Black Velvet Styling, photoboards.org. And what's the other one? Capture by Lucy. Capture by Lucy's a nice one as well. Okay, so I'm going to share my phone with you again now. And that's it. Okay, oops. Sorry, I keep getting things popping up on the screen. Right, so let's have a look at those pictures that I just took. Okay, that's the flat lay, and that is, I mean, that's quite a nice shot. I'm happy with that. I can zoom in on it a bit. I can have a good look at that, and I'm quite happy with that as a shot to advertise those tea bags. But what I would do is edit this in a moment, and I'll show you that quickly. I'm aware on time that we've not got much time left, but I'm nearly done now. This is the side-on shot. Doesn't look anything like as nice, does it? It is harder with a phone to do these side-on shots. It works much better if it's just a clean, simple shot of the product. It's because you can't get that lovely soft focus background in the same way. And as I said, I would have styled this for longer and tried to do a better job with it. And on this shot, I stood slightly higher up and angled the phone down a little bit, and it distorts the angles. It's made that tea look quite squat and short. So you have to be really careful about your angle as well. And you're better off holding your phone exactly vertical to take those sorts of shots and not going in at an angle. So what I'll do now is have a look at the app that I use to edit with. This has been a real whistle-stop tour of product photography, but hopefully you've all sort of starting to glean some stuff out of it. The app that I like the most for editing on my phone is called Snapseed, and it's down at the bottom right there on the screen, a leaf symbol, and I'm going to tap on it now. Okay, and I will open one of the images that I've just taken. Okay, I'll open that flat lay one. Okay, so that's the shot that I took, looking pretty good. Quite happy with it really, but I edit everything. To me, editing is like the final brush strokes, the final stage of the process. You've gone through all of this stuff, you've got your product looking amazing, you've checked the light, you've used the best settings on your camera, and then you don't bother editing it. That, you know, it really, every picture benefits from some editing. So with Snapseed, you've got all these preset looks that are a bit like filters and things. I don't use those. And then you've got tools where you get all these different tools. And I'll just show you the first one. And again, I'll send a link to a short tutorial that's a brief introduction to Snapseed. Okay. And I've just tapped on the very first symbol, which is, was it tune? What it was called now. Very first tool anyway. And it says brightness at the top there. And if I scroll left, rub left on the screen with my finger, or right, we get to brighten and darken our image. And I felt like this image was a tiny bit bright before. Okay, before and after isn't working. Oh, it's very subtle anyway. Little bit bright. And then if I scroll up and down, you get a different set of tools within there. And this is how Snapseed works all the way through. Okay, touch the screen, bring up a menu, select what you want to change, and then go right or left to see that. And hopefully you can see the contrast on that increasing, and that looks better now. I've increased the contrast a little bit. Okay, I could crop it with the crop tool. So I could decide I want that as a square crop for Instagram. Okay, don't really want to crop off my product too much. In fact, I would probably on that one go for maybe a 5x4 crop. Don't want to crop my product. Just to bring it a bit closer, okay? And then there's another tool, again, don't try and remember all of this, but this is another tool that brings out the definition a little bit more. So if I click on the screen before and after, you can just see that, look at the texture of the cloth, that's after, okay? And it's just brought out the detail a bit more. And then if I want to add my sort of artistic feel to this image, I could use one of these different filters along here. So I could pick that one. And again, don't worry if you didn't follow what I did then. This has added grain, and it's added a certain look to the image. So that's before, that's after. Take the grain away and take the style strength down a little bit. So I'm just trying to show you the flexibility of the app more than anything, not a tutorial in how to use it at this point. And then tick that, export. You've got lots of different options there. And then I should be able to go back to the gallery and just show you, where's it gone? This is iPhone doing weird. So that was before, no, that's after, before and after. It's not a massive difference, but it is enough of a difference. And actually what I could have done there, and I'll show you one from earlier, is put some text on in Snapseed as well, okay? So there's a number of different text styles. You could put your website on, you could put a marketing message on, and that's all within Snapseed. Okay, that was, I think, if I've remembered to say everything, everything I was going to say to you today. So let me do stop share and see if anybody's got anything they'd like to ask me.
Yeah, we've had a question. Should you zoom in on the phone, or is it best to do that in the editing afterwards?
Right, okay, yes, I did see that question in the ones that were sent before the session. With an iPhone and some of the more recent phones, you can zoom in to a certain extent and the quality is good. This didn't used to be the case. Phones generally were rubbish if you zoomed in. All it did was blow up the pixels, a bit like in enlarging a photocopy, and you lost quality. What you'll find now, depending on your phone, you'll see that you can zoom 2 times, 3 times, 5 times. And depending on your phone now, the does actually use what's called optical zoom, where it's using good quality lens to zoom in, not just doing it digitally. So you need to look up your phone model and find out how much can you zoom before it becomes just digital zoom, where it's just blowing it up. Okay, so yes, you can. They're a lot better. If you've got a recent phone, you can zoom to a certain degree, but don't zoom massively, because that's when the quality starts to deteriorate.
Okay. What if you've got an iPad? Could you use that for photography, or would you recommend using your phone?
No, they're awful. They're awful quality, iPads are. And I've not seen them making any massive progress with that either. I think they're kind of really knowing that people are doing the photography with their phones these days.